You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Well, hey there, folks, and welcome to episode number 169 of the Just Japan podcast, The Real Japan. My name's Kevin O'Shea, and I am the host of the Just Japan podcast, a weekly podcast that brings you all kinds of interesting stuff about Japan, every aspect of life you can think of. Go listen back to the past 168 episodes, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Well, after quite a hiatus, we're back. We're back in the saddle. The Just Japan podcast is here to entertain you and teach you a thing or two about Japan. Now, my name is Kevin, and I lived in Kobe, Japan for 10 years. I currently live in Beijing, China, and I've got a Japanese family, basically. And I've just come back from Japan after almost 2 weeks holiday in Kobe and Osaka, visiting my wife's family, and it was a wonderful time. It was something that really got me stoked, psyched, energized again about blogging about Japan, writing about Japan, sharing Japan with you guys out there, and of course, kicking off the Just Japan podcast again. So, if you go over to justjapanstuff.com, you'll see that there's new content up there, written articles about Japan, and of course, the podcast. So yeah, in this week's episode, I talked to Rob from therealjapan.com, and Rob was cool enough to sit down with me during my holiday in Japan. So, on the 27th of December, I held a kind of a tweet up, meet up, Just Japan podcast meetup thing at the Harbor Tavern in Kobe. And Rob from therealjapan.com was cool enough to come out and hang out with us and have some drinks and some food and some great conversation. But we met up about an hour before the meetup, and he sat down with me at the Harbor Tavern in Sanomiya in Kobe and talked to me all about therealjapan.com, and it's a really fabulous site. So, hey, let's just jump right into things right now and listen to our conversation with Rob from therealjapan.com. Okay, guys, it is Kevin here with another episode of the Just Japan podcast, and this evening I'm sitting in the Harbor Tavern in Kobe, Japan, chatting with Rob from realjapan.com.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Kevin.
Okay, so therealjapan.com. Well, first of all, actually, Rob, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Sure, yeah. My name's Rob. I'm from England. I live in the southeast of England. Well, I say live. I used to live in the southeast of England.
Okay.
I'm currently splitting our time between the UK and Japan.
Okay.
And so at the moment, we're in Japan for 3 months until March. And then we're going to come back hopefully later in the year. So that's the idea, to sort of split our time between the two countries. So as of a couple of months ago, I quit working full time. I'm now dedicating all my time to working on therealjapan.com, the blog.
Great.
So, yeah, looking to sort of develop that out. I guess the way I came to Japan was I was always interested in Japan, did a lot of reading, and then I started pre-internet days. This is going back a while. I had some pen pals in Japan.
Okay, great.
So we were writing to each other,
Yeah.
and they gradually sort of dwindled, and I was left with one, and that one then became my wife a few years later.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's really cool. That's a cool story.
Yeah. So that's how we met, and I came to Japan for the first time in 2000.
Okay, I'm going to backtrack a moment. So you had pen pals. How old were you when you first started getting pen pals from Japan?
That's a good question. I was about 20 actually. Yeah, I'm 50 now.
Okay, and you were just interested in Japanese culture,
Yeah,
interested in meeting Japanese people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you're younger, you sort of see the Orient,
Yeah.
just collectively, and it all seems exotic and strange and exciting. And I just sort of gradually, from quite a young age, was reading a lot of stuff, and then whittled it down to realise, okay, the things that I really commonly like are things about Japan.
Okay.
So it was Japan that I focused on, and then I just read sort of voraciously, sort of economics, history, anything about Japan. Mm-hmm. So I always had a desire to come here.
Nice.
So that was just kind of inevitable.
Okay, so I'm wondering. So you had this interest in Japan. Now obviously you're traveling here right now, working on therealjapan.com. Have you ever lived here in the past?
No, we've only travelled frequently, so I'm not sure. I've done 20 plus trips in that time.
Okay.
So, but they've always been sort of fairly short, 3 weeks typically, 2 or 3 times a year.
Okay.
But the focus of those trips has always been to travel.
Yeah.
And my wife was always a big traveller before we met up. I was always a big traveller.
Yeah.
But the thing we had in common was that we both liked doing things off the beaten track.
Okay.
So whenever we came to Japan, we very rarely, actually it was I came to Japan in 2000 and went to Tokyo on business for a couple of days.
Okay.
After that, it was 10 years before I returned to Tokyo.
Really? Okay.
So I was typically going to the more off the beaten track places. So, checking out the different islands, north and south, Sado, for example, Shidoshima.
Well, I mean that's one thing that I've lived in Japan for 10 years, and I've only been to Tokyo twice, and once was to run a marathon. So it was like I can guarantee you're more traveled in Japan than I am. I really kind of stuck to this area and just kind of lived that daily life that one lives, with some side trips here and there. But that's the side of Japan that really appeals to me, maybe with you too, are those kind of smaller areas that you don't see in YouTube video blogs and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm a bit of a sucker for tradition. I would say tradition and traditional sort of environments rather than the history per se. I like a lot of the history of Japan, but I like walking down the streets that feel like they haven't changed for hundreds of years. So there's places in Tokyo you can do that, but I just like it quiet, and I like being the foreigner. I don't speak hardly any Japanese, so it's a bit of a challenge, but when my wife's with me, obviously that makes things easier. But I don't mind that. I like exploring. I like sort of going solo a lot, and whenever we've travelled, we've never done things as package tours. We've always done it independently.
Okay.
So kind of doing things on the fly, making bookings at the last minute, or actually as we're travelling.
Yeah.
I always find that more rewarding.
Yeah, that is more fun. If you plan things, I guess flying by the seat of your pants a little bit makes it more interesting than having being a slave to an itinerary.
Absolutely.
We got to get here by this day because we've got a hotel booked.
And I can understand if people are coming a long distance to come to Japan, they want to make the most of it and they want to tick a few boxes. That's kind of almost inevitable. And you want to make sure you're getting your money's worth, because it can cost a lot to come here and to travel. But I always say to people, try and allow some time in your itinerary. Try and at least have some mornings or afternoons, or ideally whole days, where you've got nothing planned, and just decide what you want to do on that morning. Just pick up some things locally, some guides. The tourist information here is good. The larger ones always have English speakers. They'll point you in some of the right directions, and while they might point to some of the bigger cities, there's always smaller places on the edge of those cities or towns, or they might give you an idea for areas or regions to go to. Nice. I just think it's good to go off the beaten track and just not entirely sit your pants, but
I'm curious. Okay,
so unpredictable.
Can you tell the listeners what is therealjapan.com?
Okay, so
what's the origin story of it?
Okay. Well, I was publishing. I still publish. I've published a music blog, music review blog, since 1999. So that's it's quite ancient in internet.
So you were actually writing HTML.
Yeah, absolutely. From code. Yeah,
and in Notepad and
exactly. All that
uploading it with an FTP protocol.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I used to blog back then too.
So I was used to writing. I've always been writing. I've always been publishing and writing. Ever since my school days, I was publishing fanzines and stuff. And then I did it professionally for a few years. So I've always had it as a kind of an interest generally. And so I had that experience of writing for my music blog for decades under my belt. And then, obviously I started spending more time in Japan, and I thought, okay, what triggered it actually was we had friends both in the UK and in Japan who were asking us for tips on places to go. And actually, subscriber-wise to my website, I think about the third country that's most represented in terms of subscriber numbers is actually Japan. And it's a lot of expats who are in the major cities but just don't get the time because they're working all the time to go out of the city and know where to go. So they're looking for a quick, easy index of stuff that's in English, in their native language typically, and so they come to my site.
Nice. Actually, when I think of the Just Japan podcast, when I actually go to the when I look at the demographics of who's listening, I go into Libsyn, the hosting provider, and actually the number one market is the United States, of course, just sheer volume.
Same here. Yeah.
Number two is Japan.
Yeah.
So, like each month, like when I was podcasting regularly and it was doing very well, say earlier in the year, before I made my move and stuff, geez, I was getting like literally there'd be a few thousand downloads a month from within Japan.
Yeah.
And I think it's again like that's. I mean, I listen to Japan-centric podcasts. I listen to the LT Insider podcast. I listen to Tofugu podcast, and I know that Anthony Joe just brought back the Tokyo podcast. Even when I was living in Japan, I was listening to those because it was like hearing some really interesting stories of different people in Japan.
Yeah, and of course, friends in the UK were, thinking it's, they're saving up for the big adventure, so it's that kind of thing, and they want to make sure they don't waste their money, and but they also were quite interested. Just I guess the kind of friends that we had were doing things different. So we've got a couple of friends that live nearby who are really into motorcycling, and they did about a 3-month tour last year. They did Nepal and China and places like that. So Japan is next on their itinerary, so they're looking to come out next year. So it's those kind of things that people were coming to us for ideas, and then a lot of our friends based in in Japan rather, and typically a lot of them were in Tokyo. Also, we were saying, we're going here and we're going here this time, and they hadn't heard of a lot of these places, and I was really surprised. So I thought, hang on, there's got to be, the easiest thing is to just answer all these questions literally and put them in a blog, and so that's how the idea started.
Well, it totally makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, you're from the UK, and how many places have you never been to? I mean, I'm sure there's so many wonderful places, incredible hiking places and trails and nature places, or cool little cafes and back alleys with neat kind of culture that you've never heard of. Yeah, it's like that with me from being from Canada. There's so much of Canada I've never seen. So the Real Japan. So you started off, and did it just start off as you kind of like blogging about the places you went to?
What I did, because I really wasn't sure whether, I don't know, I was unsure whether it was a great idea or not, basically. Okay. So what I did is I signed up for a Blogger account when that was kind of happening. Yeah. This was probably around 2014, something like that, and I just kind of dabbled around with Blogger because I hadn't actually properly blogged as such. I mean, the website that I had is it's full on reviews, live reviews, gig reviews, music reviews, that sort of stuff. Very kind of organised and that sort of thing. It wasn't about me, and it wasn't about my passions as such. It was more about just writing about other things. So, because I wanted to put more of my personality into the blog, I thought I'll trial on Blogger for a bit, and I didn't publicise it. I just kind of thought, okay, do I write about all the minutiae of every day, or because we're not in Japan all the time, so you can't kind of do the here's my daily life type thing.
Gotcha.
So I did that for about 10 months just to kind of feel my feet and think, okay, what is it that would work and what would be of interest to people? So I did that, and then I ported some of the content to that over to the website when I launched it. I launched it in March 2015, so it's still relatively new.
Okay, and so. I mean, there's one thing that I'm a subscriber to your newsletter. So, tell us or tell the listeners a little bit about the newspaper. Or newsletter, I should say. Yeah,
well, it's just kind of one of a bunch of things that I do for subscribers. So the first thing that people tend to sign up for is I publish a guide to what I call 5 adventures in the real Japan. So these are kind of off the beaten track type things. So, for example, a couple of those are snorkeling off the coast of Okinawa. One of those is going into an icebreaker ship off the north coast of Hokkaido. Another one is doing the kodo drumming on Sado Island.
Oh, wow.
So these are the sorts of things that were in the guide. And
so this is a guide, the Real Japan guide that.
All subscribe.
Do people have to pay for it?
No, it's free. It's free. They just have to subscribe. So just pop in your email address on the website, and you'll get instant access to that. Nice. Beyond that, there's a content library that I'm slowly building up, but that's got extra things like guides to choosing a guide. There's one in there, it's choosing a guidebook to Japan. So, is it photos? Is it Lonely Planet? Is it Rough Guide? Which, what aspects of Japan are you looking for, and which might be the best guide? That's a really popular download as well. Nice. There's a few others in there as well. So there's a free content library, the guide to 5 adventures. And then there's the weekly newsletter. So that goes out every Friday ahead of the weekend to hopefully give people some inspiration. And also people tend to have a bit more time at the weekend to do some planning. So I put things in there. So it might be some updates from the website. It might be because I've got a YouTube channel as well. So I'm building up content on there.
And what's the address for that? How can people find your YouTube channel?
It's youtube.com/C/The Real Japan.
Okay. Cool.
C/The Real Japan.
You got the folks? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so the email is kind of a bit of a bulletin of things that are happening, recent places I've been, some links to any of the content that's new on the YouTube channel or the website, and then hopefully some extra resources. So I'm quite active on Twitter, and I'm quite sort of promoting other people's content is a big thing that I do, because for me it's just all good stuff is worth sharing.
Yeah,
so
I'm with you on that. Definitely.
So that's kind of my mindset. I'm not worried about competitors or any of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I know people get quite hung up about that, other bloggers and stuff, but for me it's all good. So I just share and share.
I think you find, like, when for example, if you're a Japan-centric Twitter feed and you're just sharing good stuff, period, and you're sharing a lot of content, you're gonna grow.
Yeah,
because people will look at you as a source of, this is a great place to go. I think that's like that with a Facebook page too. I mean, if you have the Real Japan Facebook page, instead of just sharing what you write only, if you're just sharing lots of great content, people know, like, this is a place.
Probably about 80% other people's content.
This is a destination to stop where I can just find out lots of cool stuff about Japan. Right?
Yeah, I mean that's what I want it to be. Funny enough, just yesterday I had a new subscriber, and they also followed me on Twitter, and they sent a message to me on Twitter saying, do you work for a travel agency? They were kind of wondering what my angle was.
Okay.
Do you work for a travel agency? So I just replied and said, no, I'm an independent full-time blogger. I just that's what I do. And then they sent me another message and said, well, why do you do this? And I said, because I love to travel and I'm really passionate about Japan. I just want to share that with people. And that's literally, there's no agenda. That's all it is. So yeah, I mean, I'm just, I'm very enthusiastic about other things, other people. Like that's why I did the music blog for so long, and I'm still doing that. So I really like promoting things that I'm passionate about that I think other people would like as well. So that's the nub of it.
We're two like-minded people. I mean, here we're sitting in a pub right now, guys, in Kobe, Japan. And if you hear music and chatter in the background, it's because we're doing this interview in a pub. I'm visiting Japan for my winter holiday from Beijing, China, and I just decided, like, about a week ago, I put out a call. I said they're gonna have like a meetup at the Harbor Tavern in Kobe. Anyone come along, just hang out. And obviously the people are going to be coming here, people who are interested in Japan, and people are interested in, say, like Twitter or YouTube and that kind of thing. And obviously what you do is a perfect match for that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So, I mean, so now, okay, so you recently pulled the trigger, so to speak, and you've gone full-time.
Yeah.
So that must have been a kind of a scary thing to
quit
full-time work.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about it for ages, and I'm a terrible procrastinator. So I've been thinking about lots of things for many years before I actually do them. So I was wondering about whether this was a good idea or not, and I just thought a lot of it was, to be honest, I was struggling to give the website the time it deserved, and I thought that's kind of shortchanging people that had signed up.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, we've really got to think these things through. But so I mean, without going into personal details, I just decided to pull the plug on the job, which I've been at for 9 years and I was really enjoying. But I remember it was 10 years ago when I was 40, I changed jobs, and I was in a really good job at the time, very happy with it, but I just wanted a change, and just felt right. So I changed jobs, went into this one. Again, almost another decade gone. I thought, Christ, a decade goes past so fast. I don't want to leave it too long before I really want to do what I really want to spend a lot of time on, which is traveling more in Japan. So the idea, as I say, was to split our time, roughly 6 months in the UK, 6 months in Japan. And people immediately say, well, don't you want to live in Japan all the time? And I have to say, I don't. I love it as much as anybody does, but I really love my home as well. The trick, obviously, is to try and afford the two. Yeah. So we'll see how that pans out. But, so that's the plan. So I finished full-time work at the start of October, and we came to Japan on the 11th of December, and we're here until the start of March.
Okay, yeah.
So 3 months initially. We've got a cat at home in England who's been cat-sitted whilst we're away, so we might bring him over if we come over here more longer term, so 6 months at a time or something.
So right now with therealjapan.com, you is it you're the one creating the content?
Yeah, I'm the primary writer.
Okay.
Yeah. I do get contributions occasionally. I got a really good contribution about I'm going to forget what they're called, but the women who are born blind from birth and they become spiritualists. And they contact the dead, and also so I've got another blogger who focuses on spiritualism in Japan.
Okay.
And she contributed an article. That's a really great piece. And I also got a guy who's an old friend of mine, actually, from writing on the music scene many years ago, and I published in the past. He travels to Japan frequently, and he's got a record label, and he knows the underground music scene in Tokyo really well.
Angle.
Yeah, so he's written a really extensive guide to the live house scene in Tokyo. So Miles, his name is, and that's on the website as well. So yeah, it's primarily my content, but where I can find something that's niche and unusual and a different angle, then I'll go to somebody else if it's appropriate.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah. So for anyone out there who's an aspiring writer, if they have that kind of angle and they're interested in contributing, would they be able to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm very open to contact from anybody. Yeah, I'm always happy to collaborate with others. So, I mean, the contact details are on the website, just therealjapan.com. There's a contact form on there. Just click the contact button. It's very straightforward. Yeah, drop me a line. Always interested in working with others.
Nice.
And as long as the angle is unusual, a little bit, a little bit different, beyond the obvious, should we say?
Not an apartment tour video.
No, hopefully not. Yeah, there's none of those on the YouTube channel. I can promise you.
That's good. Once upon a time, when YouTube was new, those were really fast.
Yeah.
I can remember even like. I made one of an apartment I had in Korea back like when I was like 2006. I made a YouTube video, and that's like pre monetization and stuff. But I made an apartment tour, and it went to like 50,000 views, which in like 2006 was like unheard of. Like that was super viral.
Yeah.
And, but that's because I was kind of one of the first ones to do it there. But okay, so therealjapan.com. You know, it's just gonna, now that you're doing it full time, I assume it's just gonna become more robust with more information.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I'm not assuming anything because again, there's no ego involved here. I kind of park myself a lot of the time, and I survey subscribers a lot. So I also ask them for what type of content they like. I don't know if you remember recently I did a survey on the content form. So do you like blog posts? Do you like long or short blog posts? Do you like videos? Those sorts of things. And so based on that feedback, I will then develop the content accordingly. So yeah, it's very much, I try to be as interactive as possible. I get personal emails all the time from subscribers, and I reply to them all. One thing I would like to try and build up is the YouTube channel. For some reason, it's not getting the kind of numbers that I like. But having said that, I only launched that about a year ago, so the blog's been going for like a bit longer.
Yeah.
And I know these things take time, but yeah, if anyone wants to go over there and subscribe, that would be really cool.
Awesome. Okay, well, we'll round things up and then enjoy some more beverages, and we've got some people coming soon for our little meetup, tweet up. So can you tell the folks out there in Just Japan Podcast Land, where can they find all of you, like all of your social media stuff?
Yes, so the website is therealjapan.com. We're on Twitter as TheRealJapan1 and on Facebook as TheRealJapan1. That's the number 1 at the end. On Instagram as The Real Japan Guide.
Okay.
And YouTube is youtube.com/c/TheRealJapan.
Okay, nice. Now I've got your blog bookmarked. I follow you on Twitter. I'm gonna go and follow you on YouTube and on Instagram as well. So you guys go check out those links. They'll be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. Yeah, thanks for joining us this evening.
Thanks for inviting me, Kevin. It's great to finally meet up with you.
Yeah.
I've been listening to your podcasts and really enjoy them. So
awesome.
It's great to be a part of it.
Again, folks, therealjapan.com. Go there. All right.
Please hang up and try again.
Well, I want to thank Rob for taking the time to stop by the Just Japan podcast and share with all of you awesome people and me a little bit more about therealjapan.com. If you're interested in Japan, you want to travel here, you want to live here, you want to visit, you're interested in the culture, therealjapan.com is a great place to stop by and learn a lot of great stuff about Japan. So again, go bookmark therealjapan.com if you have that interest in Japan. And obviously if you're listening to this podcast, you do. And follow Rob over at on Twitter at TheRealJapan1. So at TheRealJapan1. Again, therealjapan.com. All the links for this week's episode will be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. So go there if you're not sure what to do. Alright guys, well that pretty much does it for another week of the Just Japan podcast, and I want to say that it's really awesome to be back, folks. I'm really excited to be sharing more Japan stuff with you guys. After my holiday in Japan that I just got back from today, I'm energized, I'm psyched, I'm excited to produce more content about Japan over on justjapanstuff.com and here at the Just Japan podcast. So we're going to be back each and every week, I promise you guys. Awesome stuff coming your way about Japan. Of course, you can follow me over on Twitter at JLandKev. And again, go to justjapanstuff.com. Oh, and one more thing, some awesome stuff I want to share with you guys that I thought was really cool for the podcast. Now, if you're familiar with Tofugu, tofugu.com, that is a great Japanese language learning website. It's been around for quite a while, got a great reputation. And Tofugu has a podcast called the Tofugu Podcast, which is run by Koichi over there at Tofugu and his crew. And in a recent episode of the Tofugu Podcast, just before Christmas, a listener asked him, hey, are there any other Japan-related podcasts that you would recommend? And he said, he just named one. He said, the Just Japan Podcast is pretty nice. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Koichi. I'm happy you listen. I'm happy you like the podcast. And I'm really happy that you mentioned us on the Tofugu podcast. So for all of you guys, if you have an insatiable desire, an unquenchable desire for more stuff about Japan, and you're not already subscribed to Tofugu, go over to the Tofugu podcast. It's over on iTunes and just do a Google search. It's all over the place. Go subscribe to them. Now that's it, guys, for another week of the Just Japan podcast. My name is Kevin. I'm a Canuck who lived in Japan for a long time and plans to live there again. I'm on a little hiatus right now in Beijing, China, doing some cool work here, and I'm looking forward to being back in Japan in the spring. I'm going to be there for another trip for a few weeks with my family. All right, guys. Well, that does it for another episode of the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan, no matter where you are in the world. Hope you're happy. Hope you're happy. Wait, I just said that. Hope you're happy. Hope you're healthy. I'll be talking to you real soon.